Hey everyone, it's Rob from Combat Self-Defense, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite strikes. We're going to talk about the straight lead. Before we move on with the lesson, make sure you're subscribed and have the notification bell turned on. That way, you never miss a new video. Let's talk about the mechanics of the straight lead. The straight lead looks a lot like the jab, but the intention is different. The point of a jab is to keep my opponent away from me and to measure distance with my arm. I'm keeping my weight more or less in between my legs, if not slightly on the back leg. I don't want to commit forward on a jab because that ruins the whole point of the probing shot. But the straight lead is turning that jab into a power shot by committing my weight forward. When we're talking about generating power with the lead hand, we're talking about throwing a lead hook or throwing an uppercut. And those are both valuable punches. But the quickest distance between 2 points is going to be a straight line. And for someone like me, who is already dealing with reach problems, then getting a little extra reach from the straightforward position is going to be super helpful. So let's talk about how we do this punch. What I'm going to do is whip my hip over and put my weight onto my lead foot. I'm taking the weight off of my rear foot, not only for length, but also to get power. Remember, all power in striking comes from rotation. If there's no rotation, there's no power. That's true of your hooks, that's true of your crosses, and that's true of the straight lead. So I rotate my hips forward. Not only am I doing that for power, I'm also doing it to get more length out of my shot. I'm taking my shoulder and going almost completely perpendicular to my opponent. So, I'm here, I whip my hips over, I lean my weight forward, bang, there's my shot. Again, I'm here, boom. It's a very long strike. It allows me to use the full length of my arm and shoulder and then bring it right back to my original position. It's all going to come from the hips, and you have to do it explosively. I can't turn and then throw. I have to whip my whole body into this strike. So, once again, I'm here, and that's throwing the strike from a traditional straight-on boxing stance. If I go more sideways and take more of a modified Philly shell stance, I can get an even longer straight lead, because now I'm using the entire length of my body. I personally don't like going completely perpendicular to my opponent because that essentially takes my rear side out of the equation. So I'll go more 45 to my opponent, but still, that gives me a lot of length in this strike. We need to pay attention to the mechanic of how our shoulder and our arm are working together. What I'm doing from here is extending my body through the chain of my upper body. I'm not trying to chop down at the elbow. I'm extending my lat, my shoulder, my elbow at my opponent. There's an extension happening through the trunk. I'm not chopping down, I'm reaching forward, which is why I like to start this punch from a bottom position so that upward motion is much easier for me. So I'm extending through the trunk, through the back, shoulder, and finally through the elbow. Now, let's say I want to get even more length out of the straight lead. Yes, I know that from here, I can't hit my opponent without taking a step for the jab or whipping my hips for the straight lead. But let's say I want to be over here. Let's say I'm dealing with someone who's much taller than I am, and they have the reach with their arm that I have with my legs. I can walk forward and try to sneak my shots in that way, but I'm probably going to get hit a lot. Or I can dive straight in with that straight lead and sneak it in like a sneaky knife. And that's what Bruce Lee took from fencing. This diving motion is very common in fencing when you're fighting with a saber. And so, we're going to take that and use it for our straight lead. What I'm going to do is push off the rear foot and slide across the ground with my lead foot. I'm barely leaving the ground. I'm not hopping up and landing, because that's a big movement that's very obvious for my opponent to see. All I'm doing is pushing and whipping my hips in the same motion. This is a diving straight lead, and it lets me cover a lot of ground. But it requires me to be explosive off this rear foot. And it requires me to not be obvious that I'm loading weight onto the rear foot to make that leap happen. I'm keeping my weight more or less centered and just using this like a spring to slide me forward. So again, I'm here, push off the ball of the foot, reach with the lead, and then retract. Push and retract. This is normally how you want to move anyway. Even if I'm standing like this and I don't want to use a straight lead, I'm still pushing off the rear foot to step with the lead, pushing off the lead foot to step with the rear. This is normally how you want to move. I'm just exaggerating it to get more length out of it. I'm just pushing harder off the ground. When I do this strike, if it lands, he's probably not knocked out. That might hurt pretty bad, but that's not the end of the fight. So, I need to be careful not to leap and fall forward like this, because now I'm exposed to get hit again. So I throw my strike and recover back to my stance. And preferably, I throw my strike and follow up with another shot right after it. What I don't want to do is hunt with this arm. I don't want to let my arm lead the movement, because then you'll see when I crash, I fall into it. So when this lead foot hits the ground, that's when my fist hits my opponent. Otherwise, it's just extending through the motion. So those are your two options for the straight lead. You can do it in place, or you can dive into it. By the same token of this strike being powerful because it comes straight down the line, you also need to remember that my entire body is straight down the line. So if your opponent's good at reading when you're going to do this strike, or he just has longer limbs, he's going to know exactly where your head is to be able to counter you. So sometimes it's good to keep your head offline as you throw the strike, which you can totally do. You can play with moving your head offline, because all that's important is the trunk and the back moving towards the opponent. And again, I like throwing it from the modified Philly shell because this hand is ready to catch if need be. I can either catch my opponent's counter shot, parry it, block it, doesn't matter, I'm keeping this hand engaged. So while you're practicing it, practice it with the intent of getting hit back. Keep that in mind, and it's going to be much more likely to be successful. Now, this is a strike I took from Bruce Lee, who invented Jeet Kune Do, aka the way of the intercepting fist. And that is exactly what this strike is. Because not only is this a good way for me to initiate a strike, but if my opponent has initiated, let's say he's throwing a lead overhand, I can shoot straight down with the minimal effort required to throw the lead straight and counter him before he gets a chance to hit me back. It's beautiful in its simplicity. So like I said, you don't only have to do the straight lead in a vacuum. It's very easy to put it in a combination, which is exactly what we're going to do now. I'm going to be here, just at a range with my opponent. I dive in with my straight lead. As this arm retracts, I'm going to drop to a body cross. Then I'm going to follow up with a hook up top and finish down low once again with an uppercut. The reason I'm going down low is because normally their attention is going to be diverted up top from the straight lead, exposing them to the body cross. Then I sneak this hook back up and finally finish with the uppercut and disengage. So a little faster, it goes again. I want to be careful with this combination that my straight lead doesn't land me completely perpendicular to my target, because then my cross has a really long way to travel. So I'm going to split the difference and just leave myself at a 45-degree angle, then rotate over for the cross, then come up with the hook, and finally the uppercut. Once again, it looks like straight lead, cross, hook, up. Again. Combination number 2. Once again, I'm going to start out of range and dive in with my straight lead. But now, instead of going low to follow with a body cross, I'm going to follow immediately with a rear overhand. These two flow pretty easily, and I'm not putting a break between them. As soon as I dive in with this, the rear overhand is already on its way. Then from there, I'm going to flow into a lead uppercut to the body. From there, I'm going to step out and throw a rear roundhouse kick. Bang, just like that. So it's two separate combinations. It's a straight lead to an overhand, followed by an uppercut to a kick. So this one push is motivating both the straight lead and the overhand. So all together it looks like this. Then the uppercut, then I pivot over, roundhouse kick. Again, it looks like this. This last combination, I'm going to use my legs to mask the fact that I'm going to throw a straight lead. So I'm here in my stance. I throw a rear leg roundhouse kick. Bang. Then from there, I'm going to throw another rear leg roundhouse kick. At this point, I've thrown 2, and my opponent thinks there's going to be a third, especially because he sees that weight shifting forward. If I commit to shifting my weight forward, like I should be on my roundhouse kick, then he thinks this is a tell of that roundhouse kick. But we know it's not. Instead of coming here for a third time, I dive forward with the straight lead. So altogether, it looks like this. I shoot in, roundhouse kick. Again, roundhouse kick. Then I dive forward with the straight lead. And because I'm already here, I might as well follow up with an uppercut. So, all told, it'll look like this. Bang. Bang. Dive, boom. Again, roundhouse kick. Roundhouse kick. All right, there it is, y'all. There was a breakdown of the Bruce Lee straight lead. And I only call it the Bruce Lee straight lead because that's how it was taught to me. But it looks a lot like the boxing up jab. It also looks like a flick jab. It also looks like a back fist, and sometimes it even looks like a hammer fist. It really doesn't matter what you call a technique, because that technique is going to exist across all styles. There's only so many different ways the human body can move. So don't get caught up on who invented what, on what way it's supposed to be done super specifically. Everything can be adapted, everything can be changed, and that's what makes martial arts so beautiful. You have to figure out what works for you and make it uniquely your own. I think someone else said that before me. Anyway, you guys, if you appreciate this video, if you feel like you learned something and you're wondering how you can help me out, the best way to help out the channel is by making sure you're subscribed, tapping the notification bell, leaving a comment, and sharing the video with your friends. What I'm trying to do here is share my passion for the martial arts with as many people as possible, and each and every single one of you is helping make that mission a reality. And in that vein, I want to thank you guys for the hard work. Thank you for all the hard work yet to be done, and I'll see you next time.